Last week, we looked at being an outsider and being an outsider in our family, or if our family shares outsider status. So these were some of the images. An athlete in a family of intellectuals, the Scottish people who are of many different races, looking for independence from Great Britain, families who are immigrants, gay families, racially mixed families. There's a lot of different ways that we can be an outsider, either within the family or outside of our family, where our whole family is an outsider. Just to kind of tune back into that, what it was that you were bringing forward last week. Just what is your experience with this right now as you take a fresh look at it as well? So I wanted to go into some exploration of being included and excluded and some of the ways that happens. A few weeks ago, we talked about Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah's book, What Happened to You? And one of the things he had in there was a chart of people who are challenged in a predictable, not overwhelming way, develop resilience, and people who are challenged in an overwhelming way who don't have support are sensitized. And so we become more sensitive to experiences that are scary, or another way to put it is we become hypervigilant. Many of us probably had some kind of messages. You're too sensitive, or maybe if you were more of a freezer, get your head out of that book, get engaged with us. It's good to look at these kinds of childhood messages through the nervous system lens. What we know is that children need to co-regulate with regulated adults. And if we don't, then the neural networks to express feelings just don't develop. And many, many of us had adults, parents, people who were taking care of us, teachers, extended family, who really weren't in touch with their feelings, especially the men. But if they were expressing any feelings, often it was anger, it was out of control, or something not very safe about that. So if we had that experience growing up, and also we can look into intergenerational trauma and see that nobody's deliberately trying to not be emotionally healthy. This is something that we can look through the generations back and say, yeah, there was no room in my parents' households for emotion, or maybe there was in one, but not my partner's, or there's so many different ways that comes. So being told that you're too sensitive is especially cruel because it invalidates the emotions that we're feeling. It expects a level of emotional maturity that's not there in a child's brain. And also, it's just a way to shut us up. It's like, I can't handle what's going on for you emotionally. So instead of connecting with you and regulating and helping you to co-regulate, I just want you to shut up. And it's not consciously mean on the part of parents usually. It's just they've reached the end of their rope and they don't have the capacity. It's really hard on a child to be invalidated that way, or to be told, sometimes very clearly in words, but often in more subtle ways, what you're feeling isn't what you're feeling. So we're gaslit too around our feelings. Or we're just made to feel like, when I would express outrage at some injustice, my mother would always say, well, whoever told you life would be fair? And so that was one way of just kind of shutting me up too. So there's a lot of different ways that this happens. And what we know from research and from our own gut too, and our own heart, is that we need to have people who care about us. We need to have people who notice us when we're distressed. Oftentimes we look at a child who will go from, fairly normal kid to someone who's all of a sudden having bad grades or having a lot of anger or seems depressed. And nobody will even say, hey, what's going on with you? And that happens over and over and over again. We just don't feel like someone's noticing us. And then when we get the experience of, the adults are the ones who are harming us, then that makes it even harder because we don't have anyone then to turn to for help. So our experiences, our feelings are ignored or minimized or shamed. And we really start to develop that deep belief that it's our fault. And sometimes people will say that. And certainly living in a rape culture, women are often shamed. And they said, well, what did you expect from that guy? Look at the skirt you were wearing. Or, you shouldn't be so lippy. You shouldn't just be hiding in your room all the time. What's going on? So I wanted to take a moment here and pause and everyone get into their body and breath again. And what were you signaled? How were you signaled that your feelings were not okay? We'll take a couple of minutes to feel into that. As you're going back in time and remembering, make sure that your body and your attention are here in this moment. Notice your feet, your seat, your breath. And continue to notice any energy, any thoughts that are coming up. How were you signaled that it wasn't okay what you were feeling, or that maybe your expression of it wasn't okay? Most parents have an easier time with someone who goes into more of a freeze response or a compliance response than they do with an anger response. So you might have had a very strong response from parents, or maybe they just kind of ignored you. Change the subject. And then come back and just kind of set that aside a little bit. We're going to come back to it again in a little while. So here's this chart that I was talking about a moment ago, the pattern of stress. So one of the things that makes stress so hard on a nervous system is to be alone. Feeling like we're alone with the circumstances is a way to make it feel a lot more dangerous. We might have the same experience. Maybe we were embarrassed at school in grade 1. We didn't know something, or maybe we didn't read well, or maybe we peed our pants or something. There's lots of things that happen when we're in grade school. And so if we had a teacher that we trusted, or if we had parents or somebody in our life who we could go to and express our upset, or maybe we're crying or whatever it might be, that connection, the support that we can get, really mitigates the effect of the trauma. And Gabor Mate was talking about this recently in an interview I was listening to, that if we have that kind of support, if we have a connection, then we can really put it into perspective. This thing happened to me and it was hard. I was distressed. I was scared, whatever the experience was. And that's not who I am. And I know I have this safe place to go. So having someone to validate us and to say, oh my gosh, that must have been so scary. Or come and sit here and hug me, and we'll get through this together. That's what leads us to have experiences of being able to manage ourselves. We can co-regulate back, we can down-regulate back with somebody that we trust. And then we develop more resilience. If we don't have that, so sometimes we'll have an unpredictable response as well. Sometimes we'll have a disorganized attachment with a parent, and sometimes they're really soothing and kind, and other times they turn on us and there's contempt. And sometimes it's very predictable that they're not going to be there for us. But that really leads us to that hypervigilance and a real vulnerability. And then that makes us more sensitive. So that you're too sensitive might be true in some ways, in the sense of you're more sensitive than other kids. But what is it that led to that? And trauma has a huge impact on that. So from last week, we seek safety, acceptance, and we all want to avoid shame and exclusion. We get together with people that are like us, and this might be the science nerds at school, or the football players, or whatever it might be. And in this case, we're getting together with people who are doing this kind of work, who are authentic and courageous and open, and who are really wanting to understand and heal. And so we're accepted in this. Whereas we all know sometimes if we were to talk about, shame or exclusion or some of these things, most people wouldn't have a clue what we're talking about, and some people wouldn't want to hear it. So we all are drawn to that. And then the other really important quality is that, or thing to remember, is that we all have environments where we are included, and then we have other environments where we're not. And it doesn't matter to us. Almost entirely the ones that we're not included in don't matter to us. Like, I'm not included in really smart chess players. I'm not included in triathletes. I'm not included in a good oboe player, although I am a pretty good flute player. I'm not, all of us have hundreds and thousands of groups that we're not included in, and we don't care. It doesn't matter to us. It's not something that feels like it's important to us at all. And the ones where we need to be included, which is family of origin and social groups, especially as we're children, and that's so important to our childhood development in the brain and the nervous system. But as adults, it's important to us as well. So we can look at, when we're excluded, which ones of those, like what are the circumstances in which that matters to us. And oftentimes there's some kind of shame. So if everybody in my family were really great chess players and I wasn't, then I might feel really left out when they're all playing chess and they're all doing these things that my brain doesn't do. It's very dependent on circumstances. So let's do a little bit of inquiry again for, a few minutes at least, and look at some of these questions. What were you shamed for as a young child or a teen? So take a couple of breaths as well and really remain committed to being here in this moment. You can always look around the room. You can open your eyes, especially if you're bringing up memories. You might want to work with tapping. Stay really connected with your breath and with this moment. And then just look back. What are some of the things that you experienced where you felt shame when you were a child? And also during different times in your adult life, too. So is this something that was consistent over time? Is this something that changed? It was a little bit different later? Let's take about 3 minutes to really let that come forward. And there might have been some where you were shamed for being skinny, maybe, or not having muscles. And then as an adult, you really worked hard at developing a fit, muscled body. So there might be things where a childhood experience really affected your adult interests and commitments. So you might see those too. Or there might be some that, you feel like it really has been the same all the way through, especially with family who are not very easy to update. And as you're reflecting on that, you could also bring in the question of support, validation. Did anyone stand with you? Did you feel understood, validated, included? And also, are you standing with yourself now, or do you feel disconnected? So, connection, disconnection are on a continuum. Just what's your experience with that now? Do you feel like you're still shaming yourself for those things? Do you have a lot of real strong core deficiency beliefs? What's going on there around that? And if you have some memories of someone who stood beside you and stood up for you, you could really bring that in. Use all of your senses. It might have been just an occasional thing, or maybe it was a teacher, a sibling, or a friend. If it's as an adult, a colleague, family member, who might that be? Then let yourself kind of feel into that. What are the visuals, the touch, sounds, sights, smells? Let yourself kind of set into that for a minute. And if that wasn't coming from someone else consistently, can you feel that in yourself now? Can you be on your own side? Feel kind of that fierce, I'm here for me now. You can't you can't do this and make me disconnect anymore. Or if I disconnect, I notice that I come back. I'm really on my side. And let yourself feel that too. And one thing that we know about experience is that we form beliefs based on who did what and what happened to us. We form beliefs based on our experiences. So if people generally have hurt us, and this is influenced by the negativity bias too, we tend to remember that more. It's more dangerous. So we don't remember all the people who are neutral, or even we don't maybe consider some of the people who are positive. Our nervous system mostly remembers the people who hurt us. Or maybe it was more that nobody will notice and help me. I'm just on my own. And that's very common. We just don't really go deeply in relationships or friendships because our experience tells us that we're not going to, no good's going to come from that. They're going to let us down anyway. And sometimes our experiences are more like, what happened then? I was ashamed. I couldn't stand up for myself. I was too scared. And especially if there was someone that you cared about that was being hurt, it can be really a kind of a torture to think about. I tried so hard to protect my younger sibling from my parent and it didn't work. We also might minimize our experience. Well, it couldn't have been that bad. Lots of kids have a hard time. So just to look and see and to know that your experiences are valid and that we form beliefs. If we feel unloved, we form a belief that it's our fault, that we're unlovable. There's something broken. This is really universal. And what are maybe one belief that you can see that just popped up as you're looking at this? And is that really true? Probably wasn't true then, but does it feel true now? It was my fault that my parents didn't protect me or connect with me. Or is that true? And stay in your body, notice your breath, and notice if there's an energetic response. It's relatively easy to see these beliefs in our conscious mind, and it's a lot harder for us to let go of them all the way down, all the way into our unconscious mind. And at the time when we were a child, we really needed to keep our loyalty on the side of our parents and the caregivers so that we wouldn't be hurt more. And now we can have a fresh look at some of those beliefs. So for the last 5 minutes or so, let's go into this activating our love neural networks. So we need to practice this. You can have your hand on your heart. You can do whatever you want with your body. But just to sense into, what is your willingness? I'm willing to cultivate being kind, open-hearted, connected with myself, connected with other people. You might want to look at a belief if something was just coming up. Take some time now to really look into that. I can afford to see this clearly now. I can let go of these limiting or shaming beliefs. That wasn't right then, and I can let go of it now. And stay really present. Keep coming back to the heart. These are things that we can look at with our conscious mind, and the real juice of it comes in our heart center, in our gut. If you notice that you're getting dragged back into the past, open your eyes, do some tapping, connect with your breath again. And at some point, let go of the conscious level of the mind and just come into your heart center. Really rest with your attention in your heart center. And you might bring in someone from your inquiry, or just rest in the heart center yourself, feeling that love, the connection. It might be that you're remembering times of when you were feeling really connected and included, or it might be just that now I'm including myself. I'm not going to let somebody shame me and make me feel bad. I'm here. I know I'm a good person and I can sit with that. So, whatever it is that's coming up for you, see if you can really cultivate the kindness, the compassion, inclusion. Deep breaths. Let your body relax as you breathe out. And in about a minute, we're going to come back to the group. So let yourself bring this to a close, whatever it is that you're working with. And you don't have to stop necessarily. You can continue to have your hand on your heart, or to, as you're opening your eyes, kind of do that from that heart centered awareness, a sense of being open hearted. And then when you're ready, open your eyes.